Hey everyone, so today we're going to review and compare three different cymbals from Zildjian's K-Custom line. We've got the Custom Session Crash, the Custom Dark Crash, and the Custom Special Dry Crash. All of these are 18-inch cymbals. So what we're going to do is we're going to see how the weight varies from one cymbal to the next in these different sublines. We're going to see how they build or construct the cymbals differently and the different characteristics that result from that. And of course, we're going to go through a ton of sound samples, so hopefully this should help you decide which of these cymbals might be right for you. Okay, so let's jump into it. Now, as I mentioned, these are all K-Custom cymbals, which means they all are going to have random hammering, but the severity of it, the amount of it is going to vary from one subline to the next. So let's start with discussing the Custom Session Crash. Now, as you can see, the amount of hammering, the severity of it, is far greater than a standard K cymbal. You can see the indentation is a lot deeper, and the actual hit mark is a lot wider. It's almost kind of roundish. So if you take a look at this image that compares my standard K splash to the Custom Session, you can see how more severe it is on the Custom Session. Now, while the cymbal won't be, very bright, it should still be a little bit brighter when compared to the dark or the special dry. It should have a medium amount of sustain. It should have a medium amount of stick definition. And as far as dryness is concerned, again, it's starting to get a bit dry, especially compared to the A cymbals. But of the three, it should be the least dry of that set. Moving on to the Custom Dark Crash. Now, the severity of the hammering on this is still greater than your standard K. But if you compare it to the Custom Special Dry, you can see that the hammering marks don't go in as deep. They're not as severe on this cymbal. So you might think, okay, so that means that we're going to get more overtones as a result. But what actually makes this cymbal a little bit different is Zildjian applies what they call overhammering. So once they hammer and they build the cymbal and everything, they actually hammer it one more time. And you can kind of see this with these kind of wide but not very tall indentations that are all over the cymbal. So there's a second hammering that gets applied. And the end result is that, at least according to Zildjian, this will be a little bit drier. The dark will be a little bit drier when compared to the Custom Session. One other difference because of the overhammering is that it should result in the cymbal having a little bit of a trashy sound. Now, because the primary hammering is less severe, I believe that should give you more stick definition. It should also give you more sustain relative to the session. Okay, so finally we got this special dry custom. I don't know why they had to throw special in there, but I will say that aesthetically, it is the most different looking than the three. Right off the bat, if you look at the top of it, a lot of the cymbal looks unfinished, right? It looks kind of like, like they haven't fully lathed it. And the result of that is Zildjian says it should have an earthy sound to it. But my way of saying is that it is very, very trashy. If the amount of trashiness on this is too much for you, which I don't think it's very trashy, it's just a little bit. But if this is a little too trashy for you, this is going to be way too trashy for you. It is extremely trashy. Okay, so that's the first thing. Well, what else is going on? All right, well, so it's got some sort of kind of random hammering, some sort of K-style hammering that's going on. But then remember how I said that the hammering on this was a bit more severe? You had these little larger circles. Well, this has, in addition to that primary hammering, it's got these massive, big indentations on there. It's not full of them, but there's a decent amount of them all over the place. And then in addition to that, it looks like there's these little kind of clusters of tiny hammerings that are also, so they're not very wide, but they indent pretty hard. It's not very easy to see it on the top of the cymbal, but if you flip it over, you can see it more pronounced there. You can see where those little clusters of hammering are coming through. Also, as you'll see from the underside, that the bottom is finished. It does have that fully finished look. So this unfinished look is only on the top of the cymbal. So yeah, 3 different hammerings going on as far as I can tell. So they put a lot of work into this cymbal to make it get this like kind of grungy, dirty sound going on. So yeah, what's the result of this? Besides the fact that I think it's very trashy sounding. Well, stick definition, I think it's actually going to have the least of the 3. I think on the website they say that the session and the special dry have about the same, but I think the special dry actually has less. I think it's less, the least bright of the set. It is definitely also the driest of the set. Okay, so for the sound samples, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start off with some individual hits. So I'm just going to take out the mallets and hit the cymbals a few times, switch the sticks, play on all various parts on the cymbal from the bell to the outer edge. And then we'll start to kind of do some chokes and bass drum and chokes. And then eventually we'll build this up into some different drum beats. So you'll start to hear some context to kind of understand how this might play into different styles that you might be playing as well. One quick note on the recording setup. So I'm going to be running Earthworks omnidirectional mics. So these mics are very flat. They're not going to do any bump on the higher frequencies or anything. That's going to run into an A-Design specific preamp. Once in the computer, I'm not doing any compression or any EQ, so I'm not affecting the sound of the overheads. It's going to be very dry, so just basically phase correction is the only thing I'm doing on those 2 tracks, but the other drum tracks will have additional processing applied. Okay, so what were my first impressions on these? Well, let me start off with these two, because the session and the dark, because they're probably the closest to each other of the group. I think the session was the highest pitch. I don't want to say it was high pitched, but relatively speaking, it was the highest pitched. If you liked one of these, you could probably also maybe sort of like the other. Obviously, there's some different characteristics, like such as the dark being a lower pitched cymbal, it being slightly trashy. So there you start to get into just some personal preference there. On the special dry, though, it's a completely different beast, right? It's not, it's like a separate thing almost, right? It's almost like an effect cymbal to a certain degree. I could see if you were like, hey, I like playing chinas. I like that sort of sound. And I want to explore that more. I could see this being, the special dry being something that you might want to add, to kind of add that sort of flavor, add some accents. Whereas these might be something that you might want to, like if you want to do some like little jazzy thing, right? You want to like actually ride on it. I think these cymbals would support that well. But if you want kind of like some big, like aggressive sound, some big aggressive accents, the special dry might be that might be the where it really shines. So I hope you guys find that useful. I hope that when you're picking out your cymbals, maybe this helps you a little bit in making that decision. I do, of course, have lots of other drum gear related content coming out, in addition to recording tips and lessons and the whole gambit of drum related content. So if you don't want to miss out, then don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, peace.